I wish to move the Fianna Fáil private member's motion here tonight. This is a motion which aims to ensure that the Government move immediately to address the increasing crisis which they have overseen in the administration of student grants. I also ask that they keep the promises they solemnly made to the students of Ireland in return for their votes in the midst of the general election campaign, and seeks to get the agreement of the Dáil here tonight to protect the resourcing of education in the upcoming budget, in recognition of the fact that young people in Ireland are entitled to an education, and indeed that education should be a key platform on which we build a successful country into the future. Much progress has been made in education in recent years, but we must build on it. Over the past decade, we witnessed a transformation in the provision of education to children and young people with special needs. From a very small base at the end of the 90s, steady progress has ensured the employment of 10,000 special needs assistants, catering for the care needs of children who require their help. And there are now approximately 9,600 learning support and resource teachers in our primary and post-primary schools, providing essential teaching support to pupils with special educational needs. We have seen significant strides taken in ensuring our young people complete second-level education, evidenced by the publication last week by the Department of Education, or by the publication last week of a report by the Department of Education, showing that 90% of students beginning secondary school in the year 2005-2006 went on to complete their education to Leaving Cert level in 2010-2011. That's up 9% compared to 11 years previously. Much of this progress indeed was greatly assisted by the investment in our JESH schools, where the school retention rate increased most significantly from 68% to 80%. At third level, Ireland has moved rapidly up the ranks of OECD countries in terms of the higher educational attainment levels of its adult population, with 1/3 of adults now qualified to a higher education level. This is progress that we must ensure continues to be built upon. That will take strong resolve and very clear prioritisation of the education budget. It will require ensuring we continue to fund education properly. That is something that will not come easily, but is something we must do. While many of the challenges in front of us will take real effort to achieve, something that should have been entirely manageable, Minister, was ensuring that those students at third level who are eligible for a maintenance grant got paid it on time. And because it was something which was so manageable, with the right effort, it is a scandal that we're here tonight discussing this issue, with over 45,000 students of the 66,000 who applied still waiting to hear whether they're going to qualify for a maintenance grant, let alone have been paid their first instalment. This has been a crisis, Minister, that has been growing for many weeks now. But despite the continuing hardship being experienced by students awaiting their grant, Minister Quinn has inexcusably refused to take control of a project which is his responsibility to deliver. He had no problem stepping up to the podium to take responsibility in early June to announce the creation of SUSI, or Student Universal Support Ireland. He said at that time that the process is quick and easy, and that many students have had to wait for lengthy periods for their grants in the past and faced undue hardship as a result of those delays. He said that this new system would erase those delays. He boasted how 65 staff would now do the work previously carried out by the 66 local authorities, 33 VECs and 33 county councils, and how it was a prime example of real public service reform. Back then, at the start of June, SUSI was very definitely and proudly Minister Quinn's political baby. How things have changed. Today, Minister Quinn is scrambling to put the blame for the failure of SUSI on anyone but himself. Once the initial PR glow disappeared, Minister Quinn no longer had an interest. And today, Minister Quinn, as a result of how this crisis has grown in recent times, the Oireachtas Education Committee moved to invite SUSI in to examine exactly what the situation is and how we can get out of it. And as part of that, Minister, I put the question to the CEO of the VEC as to how many times you had met personally with SUSI to actually discuss this situation. And the CEO was not in a position to confirm to me that she had met and sat down with you on this issue in recent weeks or months since SUSI was established and this problem has been growing. And what the staff and management of SUSI confirmed to us today, Minister, was that as of today, the 13th of November, there has only been 3,010 students of the 66,000 who have applied for a grant. That's less than 5% who've actually been paid their grant. They also confirmed that there has only been 20,000 of that 66,000, approximately 20,000 of that 66,000, who've had their applications processed to final stage, whereby there's been a decision made. And almost half of those have been refused, whereas about 10,000 have been indicated that they will actually be awarded a grant. Of the remainder, Minister, with 6 weeks now to go to Christmas, we're in a situation where over 40,000 students who applied to SUSI either have got correspondence from SUSI asking for further documentation, or in the case of half of that 40,000, their applications have not even been checked by SUSI yet to see if all the documentation is there. And Minister, what did you have to say about this? Well, this morning in Morning Ireland, your comment was, and I just quote you were not entirely sure why there was a delay. Well, Minister, this is your project to deliver. Real reform is not just about standing up on the podium and making a grand announcement. It's about taking responsibility for it and making sure it happens. And you should have long ago sat down with SUSI, who you appointed to do this job, and who were very obviously getting it wrong. You long ago should have sat down with them to see what the situation was and to examine where things were going wrong and to take ownership of ensuring that the students, the thousands of students out there across the country at the moment who are waiting on their grant and who are struggling along with their families while they wait on that grant. And there's over 60,000 of them who only 3 of the 66,000 have got paid. They're struggling at the moment. They have instalments in relation to their student accommodation to meet. They haven't been able to properly register in college. Many of them have, for the last number of weeks, had little more than visitor rights in the colleges where they attend, where they're still photocopying books because they haven't full loan rights at libraries, and where they're facing, at this stage, Minister, into their Christmas exams without actually having been able to fully register at college. But you know you have washed your hands of it, and instead of taking control, what you've been doing is first of all trying to avoid the issue until you could avoid it no more and become such a crisis that you had to comment on it. And what then did you do, Minister? All of a sudden, SUSI was no longer yours. It was somebody else's. You pointed the finger at Dublin City VEC and blamed them entirely, washing your hands of it, even to the extent this morning that you said you weren't sure what was going on. And unfortunately, Minister, what we found out today from SUSI when they were at committee was that despite having taken on additional staff, Minister, if you actually sit down with them and tease out where things are at, it's nigh impossible to work out a strategy or a pathway as to how the students who are currently waiting on their maintenance grant are actually going to be paid. And your comment so far, the Taoiseach's comment so far, has been to try and tell us that they will somehow be paid by Christmas. Well, Minister, if you did like what the committee did today and sat down and teased this issue out, you'd see very clearly that with 40,500, almost 2/3 of those students who applied, with half of them not having their packs checked and the other half still awaiting documentation, how are those going to be processed and administered? We also found out this morning that SUSI has handled 175,000 phone calls, Minister, since it was established. 175,000 phone calls for 66,000 applications. That's about 3 phone calls on average per application. And if you look at it, that SUSI had 92 staff, only 65, which you actually seem to know about, because that's all you were able to tell us up until today. That's all any of us were aware was involved with SUSI. But apparently, SUSI had 65, and then there was an outsourced agency responsible for scanning the documents, which had an additional 27, making up 92 staff. 175,000 phone calls, Minister, among 92 staff. That works out at not far off 2,000 phone calls per member of staff. I know they've increased it a bit to staff recently, but that's the level of phone calls. Now, if you as Minister were trying to do the job you do in the last few months, or since June, and you had to field 2,000 phone calls, Minister, how would you actually manage to do any work at all? That is the type of crisis that actually has been underway in SUSI, while you have paid no attention to it. So I would hope, Minister, in your comments and response here this evening, you will finally take responsibility. And I would ask you to answer the question, have you actually sat down and met SUSI in the last number of weeks to take control of this and to examine this issue in the way the Oireachtas Committee did today? I would certainly presume you met them at some stage today and would have arranged to bump into them when they were here in the Dáil. It's long past when that should have happened, Minister, but at least it needs to happen now. And what I want to hear from you is how you are going to ensure that those students who need their payment are going to get the payment between here now and Christmas. Because, Minister, my assessment of it, from looking in great detail at the way SUSI has been operating, is that they do not have a pathway to ensure those students are going to be paid by Christmas. And if you looked at it in detail, you would see that as well. And you would see, Minister, the political responsibility needs to be taken, and that you need to ensure that some additional measures are taken to ensure students are paid. Up until now, the targets haven't been met. Why should we believe that the aspirations expressed to us today will be met? And it's your responsibility, Minister, to make an assessment and a judgment on that and take responsibility for it. And to ensure that if you believe that's not going to be the case, which I believe, that additional measures will be taken. We're currently in a situation whereby we have County Council and VEC staff across the country who have been processing the grants of those students who are continuing education in the last few months, because SUSI has only been dealing with first-time applicants. They are now almost finished processing those applications in many instances. There's a real opportunity there, Minister, to actually engage some of those staff on a once-off basis this year, and for you to take political responsibility and engage with the VECs and county councils to get the assistance of those staff who are trained to do the job, to ensure that the students do not have to suffer any longer.
Deputy, you have 2 minutes.
But no, Minister, so far you have not taken the responsibility of the initiative which would see proper control taken of the situation. So I would hope that coming out of this, we will see a plan from you. And it's unfortunate that this has been the first time you've come to this chamber to actually discuss this issue. And indeed, the first time, Minister, I ever heard a comment from you on the issue was in Morning Ireland last week when you couldn't avoid commenting it anymore. This morning, what was this morning? First public comment. Your second comment. So, Minister, we just don't need commentary, and that commentary indeed being absolving yourself of responsibility. Our motion also, Minister, refers to promises you made when you were in opposition, indeed in the midst of an election campaign. Promises you made to students, similar promises to what you made in terms of delivering efficient grants. But those promises referred to a commitment from you to not increase the student registration fee, and in fact to reduce it from €2,000 to €1,500. A commitment, Minister, which you have brazenly, since you were elected, did an absolute U-turn on, and in fact said to students, I'm sorry, or not even sorry about it. You've said, I feel bad about it, but this is the way it is. You had no such problems, Minister, 2 weeks out from election day when you put your ink to pen, or your pen to paper, to sign that pledge with the students. And as a former finance minister, who should be well able to do the figures, you were well aware of the situation of the economy at the time. It's time, Minister, we've seen a different approach from you. One that isn't about grand stunts and big announcements. One that is about taking responsibility for your decisions and delivering on the commitment you make, and also delivering on the reform that you say you are going to try and bring about. We need to see that, Minister, over the coming period, and I hope here tonight the students, there's some 50,000 of them across the country, and their families who are suffering because of your approach to this issue until now and your approach to the job of Minister for Education, that they can actually see some light at the end of the tunnel and have their financial worries assuaged in the coming weeks and before Christmas.